The more time you spend exploring the world of Azeroth, the more you can learn about the layered, intricate history of the world. Interactions between cultures, the rise and fall of empires, and ancient relics are just a few pieces of the stories told within the game, but some are harder to find than others. Today, we're taking a look at one such tale, the Lost Titan Vault of Kalimdor. This is a secret that even Blizzard has made efforts to erase, but I'm excited to share with you a trove of evidence in favor of this theory. I'll be going over some important history, then outlining all the clues that point toward this secret, and by the end of this video, maybe you'll see a part of the game in a whole new way. As always, thank you for your fun comments and support, and with all that being said, let's get right into it. The Grey Land of Desolace is perhaps the least vibrant in the entire game, a wasteland where few creatures live, and even fewer thrive. Cultists and demons have found their way to this secluded corner of the world, and Naga now prowl the shorelines hunting for forgotten treasures. While the Horde and Alliance do have outposts here, the marauding centaur clans claim Desolace as their ancestral home, with rugged settlements dotting the parched land. The centaur play a pivotal role in the history of this zone, especially when considering the keystone location, Maraudon, a complex of tunnels, caverns, and grottos that is the birthplace of the centaur race. It is this history that I'm especially concerned with today, but before we consider tacking on more details to this already convoluted story, let's start with the basics. Long ago, Desolace was not a grey desert, but a fertile grassland similar to Mulgore, its neighbor. The Tauren, who knew the land as Mashan Shea, worshipped the elements and viewed the zone as a holy site, as the connection to primal elementals was especially strong here. Over 1100 years before the First War, the Tauren succeeded in summoning this presence to the surface, but were horrified to discover it was not a benevolent spirit or the Earth Mother, their goddess, but an earth elemental, Princess Therodress. Released from slumber, Therodress drained all the life force of Mashan Shea to satiate her hunger, warping it into what we know as Desolace and sending shockwaves into the Emerald Dream. This is where things take an unexpected turn. Zaytar, a keeper in the service of the wild gods, ventured to Desolace to investigate the disturbance. Instead of neutralizing the threat, Zaytar ended up siring the first centaur with the princess, an unholy union of nature and the elemental forces. The keeper was murdered by his progeny for refusing to accept them, though the centaur soon felt remorse upon realizing Therodress still loved him. As recompense, the centaur worked with the princess to construct a memorial to their sire, which released Zaytar's life energy and turned the deepest parts of the cavern into a lush paradise. These hidden passageways, once known as the Crystal Caverns of Terramok, were rechristened along with the rest of the region as Maraudon, and for 1,000 years would be the holiest site for the centaur as they continued to proliferate across central Kalimdor. That's basically the history of Maraudon we learn about when we're introduced to the centaur and Desolace in classic WoW. However, there is much more to uncover here. With that background in mind, I'd now like to introduce another element into this mix, the Titans and their ordering of Azeroth. An untold number of years ago, during the prehistory of the planet, the godly Titans visited for the first time. Here, they encountered a world not ripe for shaping, but overrun with darkness. 4 eldritch horrors, the old gods, had infested the planet like parasites, feeding on the energies of Azeroth. Ripping them out directly proved to be severely damaging to the planet, and so the Titans decided on a proxy approach instead, creating their Titan-forged servants to severely cripple the old gods and their forces, ultimately crafting 3 massive prisons to lock them away for good. A similar process befell the native elementals who reveled in the old gods' chaos, the most violent of which were sealed away inside the elemental plane. The Titans were then free to shape Azeroth anew, but eventually departed and left the care of the planet to their creations. Over time, many of these servants and structures have deteriorated on their own or have been undermined via corruption, and by the time of classic WoW, the shackles between these prisons and the surface world have become worryingly loose. Let's put together what I've set up so far. We know that Maraudon is a domain of stone, home to Princess Therodress, an aggressive earth elemental sympathetic to the old gods. The Titans worked to imprison the old gods and their elemental partners long ago, but over time, those prisons have lost some of their power. Here's the thesis. I believe Maraudon fits into this story, and was a lesser Titan vault or prison structure now forgotten in time. This might seem like a stretch, but I promise once you start digging, the clues just keep lining up. First, let's revisit our star resident, the princess. After the ordering of Azeroth, Therodrus remained in a deep slumber until being awakened by the Tauren. While the explanation given in Chronicle is that she escaped the Titan's wrath and found her way into the caves on her own, I like to think there could be more to this story. Perhaps the Titans induced this slumber to pacify Therodrus before building the vault around her, and maybe, as a daughter of the elemental Stone Mother, the Titans wanted to contain her for research purposes. This could explain why, despite being relatively powerful, she was not banished to the elemental plane like so many of her kin. It's also possible that she did initially escape and go into hiding, but was later found by the Titans and surrounded by the vault. As we established, Titan structures lose their integrity over time. The long millennia may have taken a toll here, and combined with the external old god meddling and the sundering of the world, the vault here would have been battered by the time of the Tauren's awakening ritual. I find this analogous to the old god Yogg-Saron's presence seeping out of Ulduar. Perhaps the princess was able to reach out and influence the surrounding landscape of Desolace, calling out to the Tauren from below. The architecture of Maraudon is also a major point to consider. Starting down in the lush caverns of Terramok, it's hard to make out any sort of intentional construction or unnatural features, but it's important to remember the Titans don't always deal in such things. The crystal passages of orange and purple are evocative of places like Ungoro Crater or Sholazar Basin, both created by the Titans for research. Taking a look at another boss in the dungeon, Landslide, reveals something even more curious. Mountain giants are more closely associated with the Titans and their servants than elementals, and according to the lore, Landslide was once a steward of a set of crystal gardens here before being corrupted by Princess Therodrus. This is further evidence of Titan activity here in Terramok, but it's also tragic to know that perhaps some of the last living servants of the original vault have fallen to darkness. Closer to the surface, the environment is more sculpted, with intricately carved staircases, walkways, and columns that I very much doubt were created all by the centaur. Though they have been weathered by time and countless stamping hooves, these features have an undeniable Titan feel to them. In 1,000 years of worship and civilization, the only stonework that appears to have been added by the centaur are statues near some of the pillars and the large creature guarding the entrance to the temple. The Valley of Spears, sacred ground for the Maraudon protectors, is also glaringly full of evidence if you know what you're looking for. Namely, these giant arches that fit the Titan theme much more than any centaur construction. But the clues do not stop here. Outside of Maraudon and the Valley of Spears, there is evidence that our lost vault was much more expansive in the golden era of the Titans and their keepers. The Gelkis village to the south, home to another clan of centaur, features many similar stone structures and arches, including at the entrance to Bolgan's Hole, a cavern filled with, you guessed it, more crystals. To the east, our final features can be found at the Valley of Bones, where two dead Goliaths rest on the slopes. Both entrances to the valley are flanked by more archways, leading to the question of how the Titans could relate to these mysterious skeletons. A memorial to ancient defenders, a display of victory over the old god's forces, or perhaps an exhibit of primal beings that existed here before even the arrival of the Titans. We can't know for sure, but this is definitely one of the stranger locations in Desolace, and it's even more curious now that we can connect it back to our lost vault. With all this evidence in mind, this theory of a forgotten Titan stronghold might seem a little more tempting. If you're still not convinced, allow me to present a few final ideas that practically confirm this is the true history of Maraudon in Classic WoW. Remember how I said Blizzard wanted to hide evidence of this titanic vault? Well, now's the time to address that. All the places we've been talking about, the Valley of Spears, Bolgan's Hole, and the Valley of Bones, They're all victims of an erasure in history, one much more blatant than just the passage of time or the weathering of stone. In the 2010 Cataclysm expansion to WoW, vast areas of Azeroth were revamped, but most still retained some of their original features. At the areas we've talked about, though, something very suspicious happened. All of the pillars and archways and stone walls were outright removed while leaving pretty much everything else the same. No volcanoes, no floods, just deleting game assets without explanation. I think this is very telling of Blizzard's original plan for Maraudon, one that finally got scrubbed from the world when they had an excuse to change things up. The RPG books from the early days of WoW also provide clear-cut evidence in favor of this theory. Behind a series of spiked barriers in the center of the mesa stands Terramok, an ancient titan vault. This place is rumored to hold Theradris, former princess of the vile earth elementals, and legendary mother of the centaur race. I wanted to save this for near the end of the video, since this could be taken as just a one-off throwaway line, but with the context of all the other evidence we've seen today, I think it holds even more weight. These books may be non-canon now, but referencing them in relation to classic era lore can be a very valuable and often valid approach. I'll leave you with one final piece to this puzzle, one that takes us back to the Eastern Kingdoms. Deep within Uldaman, a well-preserved known Titan vault containing many secrets, there is one little piece of the map that most players overlook. Entering the dungeon from the back side, players pass through what is perhaps the smallest piece of the dungeon, known simply as Echo Mock Cavern, the only other place in the game to use a naming convention similar to Terramok Cavern within Maraudon. If that's not a worthy parallel and clue to end on, I don't know what is. Thank you all so much for watching. Now that everything is out on the table, do you think Kalimdor and Blizzard are indeed keeping a lost Titan vault a secret? I think Maraudon being the long-lost remnants of an ancient stronghold is such a lore treat, and an idea that I fully support, and maybe now you'll see this dungeon in a whole new way next time you're farming that stupid dagger. Special thanks to Runs with Bears for sending me on this amazing journey, and until next time, may the Force be with you.